The spline tool might be the most flexible of all the sketch tools. Instead of trying to explain it up front, let's look at an example. I'll launch the spline tool from the sketch toolbar. I'll click once to start the spline, and click again to add additional spline points. You need at least 2 points to complete a spline, but you can add as many as you need. You can leave the spline as an open contour, or you can close it back at the original point. Again, it's very flexible. To finish the spline, either double-click when placing the last point, or press the Escape key on your keyboard. You can click and drag the points on the spline to reposition them, and add dimensions and sketch relations between the points to further define their position. However, even if you fully define the locations of all of the spline points, you might have noticed the spline still appears in blue, meaning something is still underdefined. Let's take a look. Notice if I select a single spline point, 2 gray arrows appear. These drag handles control the curvature of the spine. I can adjust the angle of the arrows by clicking and dragging the diamond shape, and the magnitude by clicking and dragging the end point of the arrows. I can also add dimensions or relations to the drag handles. Be careful when doing this, because if you exaggerate the angle or magnitude too much, you'll get an error and the geometry will fail. In order to fully define a spline, you must define both the locations of the spline points and the magnitude and dimension of the drag handles, so keep that in mind when using splines to create geometry. The more spline points you add, the more work you'll have to do to fully define it. That being said, I generally tend to only create 3 or 4 point splines for serious projects. That way I can fully define and dimension the spline geometry in order to create accurate drawings for manufacturing. However, if you're modeling something for fun and just want to get something close to the general shape of the design, then the spline can be a quick tool to use to create a complex sketch shape, as long as you don't care about fully defining the sketch.